They say that in the 16th century, the sun didn't rise over Zazzau, it bled over it. History remembers a woman who built walls that seemed to touch the sky, a ruler who led thousands into war and returned undefeated. But history doesn't always tell the full story. Some parts are left in the shadows. There are questions it never answers. Why did she execute every lover she took at the break of dawn? How did her kingdom grow so fast, stronger, smarter, more feared than those around it? What exactly was she building? Because this isn't just the story of a queen. It's an attempt to understand a legend, piece by piece. Welcome to the hidden history of Amina of Zazzau. If you enjoy stories like this and you want to keep seeing them, take a moment to subscribe, like the video, and let me know your thoughts below. And if you don't want to miss what's coming next, turn on notifications. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. They say the earth of Zazzau was born red, not from the clay of the riverbeds, but from the iron of the ancient hills and the inherited blood of those who dared to claim them. Long before the great walls were raised, long before the name Amina became a shadow over the Sahel, there was a kingdom of trade, of horses, and of an untapped, silent fire. In the 16th century, the house estates were a shifting constellation of power. Kano, Katsina, and Gobir. Each star fought to outshine the rest in a cycle of endless rivalry. But while the other kings looked to the horizon for fleeting gold, the people of Zaria looked to the red dirt beneath their feet and the cold steel in their hands. They were a people of the Calabi, the headscarf that signified more than mere modesty. It was a symbol of grace and the hidden, heavy weight of a mind that never truly slept. In the year 1533, a girl was born into the house of Nikotau. The air that morning was thick with the scent of burning acacia wood and the dry, metallic tang of the Harmattan wind. This child, the eldest daughter, did not cry like the others. She did not seek the comfort of the cradle. From the moment her eyes opened, she watched. She watched the shadows on the mud brick walls. She watched the movement of the guards. She watched like a predator waiting for the world to reveal its secrets. But her education was not merely of the flesh. In the hidden corners of the palace, away from the emerging orthodoxies of the court, Amina was introduced to the Bori, the ancient spiritual tradition of the Hausa people. She was taught that every stone had a memory, and every blade of grass held a frequency. She spent hours sitting with the Maguzawa, the non-Islamic sages who still held the keys to the old world. They taught her the wisdom of the iron, that metal was not just a tool, but a living spirit that required a pact with the earth. They spoke to her of the Inna, the female spirits of power and possession. It was here, in these candlelit rooms, smelling of frankincense and earth, that Amina learned her most dangerous lesson, that a ruler does not just govern bodies. A ruler must command the unseen forces that move those bodies. She learned to read the flight of the hawks over the Kufana hills. She learned to predict the coming of the rains by the scent of the dust. She was being prepared for a destiny that required her to be more than a princess. She was becoming a bridge between the physical steel of Zazzau and the metaphysical mysteries of the African soil. While other noble daughters were being tutored in the delicate art of the loom and the complex etiquette of the feast, Amina was a ghost in the barracks. She spent her childhood memorizing the rhythmic, punishing ring of the blacksmith's hammer. She stood in the dust of the training fields, her small feet disappearing into the red earth, as she watched the legendary Zazzau cavalry. She saw how they moved, not as men on horses, but as a single, thundering organism. She studied the tension in the flank and the language of the horse. Her mother, Queen Bakwa Turunku, saw this flame. She did not try to quench it. Instead, she brought the bellows. She allowed Amina to sit in the councils of war, touching the maps made of cured leather, tracing the veins of the earth with her fingers. By the time Amina was 16, she knew the precise point where the leather of a saddle meets the endurance of a warrior's spirit. She was learning the first great secret, that power is never truly inherited. It is seized from the wind and shaped in the fire. As she reached womanhood, the weight of tradition pressed in. The elders spoke of marriage, of alliances through blood, of the duty to provide a male heir. They brought suitors with chests of salt and herds of cattle. But Amina looked at these men and saw only a cage. A gilded, comfortable cage, but a cage nonetheless. She realized that to be a wife was to be a footnote. To be a queen regnant required a sacrifice of the ordinary soul. She began to gather her own circle, the men of the red dust. Warriors who looked past her silk and saw the tactical soul beneath. In the dead of night, they practiced a style of combat the Sahel had never seen, blinding speed and absolute precision. The girl was gone. The daughter of Nikotau was ready to become the walls of her people. The death of King Nikotau did not immediately bring Amina to the throne. In the patriarchal structure of the 16th century Hausa states, the crown passed not to the strongest, but to the first son. Her brother, Karama, ascended the throne of Zazzau, and for 10 years Amina lived in the shadow of a king who ruled with a steady, yet traditional hand. But Karama knew what the court did not, that the true power of the Zazzau military lay in the hands of his sister. While he managed the diplomacy of the palace, Amina was in the field. She was no longer a ghost in the barracks. She was the commander of the cavalry. It was during these 10 years that she perfected the Zazzau charge, a tactical maneuver involving heavy cavalry draped in quilted cotton armor and chainmail, moving with the synchronized speed of a desert storm. She wasn't just leading men. She was building a cult of loyalty. She ate with her soldiers in the red dust. She slept on the same hard ground. She became the Saronia, the Queen of the Sword, long before she wore the actual crown. When Karama suddenly passed away in 1567, the air in Zaria turned cold. The elders looked at the empty throne, and then they looked at the woman who stood at the head of the most disciplined army the Sahel had ever seen. There was no debate. There was only the realization that the era of the shadow was over. The coronation of Amina was not a celebration of joy. It was a declaration of war. On the day she ascended, she did something that shattered the social fabric of West Africa. She stood before the high priests and the viziers and made a vow that would echo through the centuries. She rejected the hand of every suitor. She rejected the path of motherhood. She declared herself the husband of the people.
I will not marry. I declare myself the husband of the people, bound to this assembly.
This was the first of her esoteric secrets. By refusing to marry, she removed the greatest weakness of a female ruler, the risk of a husband seizing her authority or a foreign lineage claiming her throne. She became a singular entity, a monarch who belonged to the land and to the land alone. But this power came with a dark, ritualistic price. The legends say that from that day forward, she took a lover from the ranks of the conquered in every town she subdued, only to have them executed at dawn. To the modern ear, it sounds like madness or cruelty, but in the hidden wisdom of the Zazzau court, this was a display of absolute, terrifying sovereignty. It was a message to every man in the kingdom. I am the one who takes, and I am the one who gives life and death. No man shall ever plant a seed in my garden that he intends to harvest. She was no longer a woman in their eyes. She was a force of nature, as indifferent and as powerful as the Harmattan wind itself. She did not wait for the coronation fires to cool. Within 3 months of taking the throne, Amina mounted her horse, a stallion as dark as the midnight over the Niger, and turned her gaze toward the south. Her first target was not a simple village, but the powerful Kwararafa and Nupe territories. These were people who had never bowed to a Hausa king, let alone a Hausa queen. The hidden wisdom of her first campaign was her use of flash warfare. She didn't march her army in a slow, predictable line. She used her cavalry to strike at the trade arteries first, cutting off the supply of salt and horses to her enemies before they even knew she had left Zaria. She introduced the use of the long spear and the iron vest, innovations that made her soldiers nearly invulnerable to the traditional leather shields of her rivals. When she reached the gates of the first rebel city, she didn't offer a siege. She offered a choice: submit and become part of a grander Zazzau, or resist and be buried in the red earth you stand upon. By the time the sun set on her first year as queen, the borders of Zazzau had expanded further than they had in the previous 100 years. She was returning to Zaria, not just with gold and slaves, but with the realization that the world was waiting to be carved in her image. The Steel Queen had arrived, and the map of Africa was about to be rewritten in ink made of iron and blood. As the borders of Zazzau expanded, Amina realized that a kingdom won by the sword could only be kept by the stone. She began the most ambitious engineering project in the history of West Africa, the construction of the Ganuwar Amina, the massive red earth walls that would eventually encircle every city she conquered. But the hidden wisdom of these walls lay in their design. They were not mere barricades. Amina consulted the master builders and the geomancers, creating a network of fortifications that followed the sacred ley lines of the Hausa landscape. The walls were built with a specific thickness, wide enough for 2 cavalrymen to ride abreast atop them, and infused with a mixture of local clay, cow dung, and a secret concoction of herbs that made the earth as hard as iron once baked by the sun. She understood that a wall is a psychological weapon. To an approaching enemy, the sight of a 15-foot-high crimson barrier stretching into the horizon was a message. You are no longer in the wild. You are in the domain of the Queen. These walls didn't just keep enemies out, they kept the wealth of the Sahara in. With her walls secured, Amina turned her attention to the esoteric law of the market. Before her reign, the trade of salt from the north and kola nuts from the south was a chaotic, dangerous affair. Amina changed the frequency of the trade.
The caravans must take the northern route to Timbuktu.
She established protected corridors between her walled cities, ensuring that any caravan traveling under her banner was safe from bandits, for a price. She effectively became the first economic architect of the region. By controlling the nodes of the trade routes, she forced the great empires of Mali and Songhai to deal with Zazzau as equals. The gold didn't just pass through her lands, it stayed there. She traded security for sovereignty, and in doing so, she turned Zaria into a living library of wealth. The hidden wisdom here was simple but profound. He who controls the path controls the destination. Under Amina, Zazzau wasn't just a kingdom, it was a toll gate between worlds. But even as she sat atop a mountain of salt and gold, the queen remained an enigma. This is the era where the legends of her internal alchemy began to grow. It was said that she never took off her calabi in public, and that beneath the cloth, her mind was constantly communicating with the spirits of the ancestors to foresee market shifts and enemy movements. She practiced a form of royal isolation. She was visible to her army, but unreachable to her court. This was the wisdom of the void. By remaining mysterious, she remained untouchable. No one knew where she slept, and no one knew the true extent of her personal wealth. She had successfully transitioned from a warrior to a myth. But as the walls grew higher and the treasury grew heavier, a new shadow began to form on the horizon, the shadow of a legend that had grown too large for the physical world to contain. The end of the conquest was near, and the final mystery of the queen was about to begin. For 34 years, the Queen of Zazzau did not know the comfort of a stationary palace. She was a monarch of the saddle, a sovereign of the tent. Her kingdom had grown to encompass the vast territories of the Nupe and the Kwararafa, stretching from the forests of the south to the edge of the Great Desert. But time is the only enemy that even the Steel Queen could not outrun. By the early 17th century, Amina had become more than a ruler. She was a living relic of a world she had helped destroy and rebuild. The hidden wisdom of her final years was the wisdom of the horizon. She realized that a legend must never grow old in the eyes of her people. She had to remain the Saraunia, the undefeated. Her hair beneath the calabi had turned to the color of the Saharan salt she traded, but her grip on the spear remained as firm as the walls of Zaria. She was preparing for her final flash campaign, not to conquer a city, but to conquer history itself. In the year 1610, Amina led her cavalry on one last mission toward the town of Atagara. The records of the Hausa chronicles become blurred here, transitioning from history into the realm of the esoteric. Some say she fell in battle. her blood finally returning to the red earth she loved. Others whisper of a more hidden departure, that she realized her work was finished and simply rode into the sunset, passing from the physical realm into the ancestral archives of the Star People. There is no tomb for Queen Amina. No monument marks the place where the daughter of Nikotao laid down her sword. This was her final, most brilliant tactical move. By vanishing without a trace, she ensured that she could never be buried. A body in a grave can be forgotten, but a spirit that disappears becomes a ghost that haunts the conscience of a nation. She left Zazzau not as a corpse, but as a concept. She became the wind that whistles through the gaps in the Ganuwar Amina walls. She became the fire in the eyes of every Hausa woman who refuses to be a footnote in her own life. Today, the walls she built are returning to the dust, reclaimed by the very earth that gave them birth. But the hidden wisdom of Amina of Zazzau remains. She proved that power is not a gendered inheritance, but a frequency that can be tuned by anyone with the courage to sacrifice the ordinary. She remains the daughter of Nikotao, the woman as capable as a man, the husband of the people. As we close this chapter of our saga and look toward the hidden archives of the ancients, we carry her lesson with us. That history is not written in ink, but in the iron of our will and the geometry of our vision. The Queen is dead. Long live the legend. Next time, we journey to the cliffs of Mali, to a people who spoke of the stars in ways that still challenge modern understanding, the Dogon. Until then, keep questioning what the world calls impossible. Subscribe to Esoistry for new hidden histories every week, and this is only the beginning.